everyone. I'm Lisa Weber Curry, Manager of Clinical Services at Ascension Counseling Center. You're watching Ascension Counseling Center's video newsletter, where we talk about the services we offer and how you can benefit from them. Thanks for joining us. Coming up in this episode, we'll hear from Suzanne Hamilton, Director of Ascension Counseling Center. Suzanne will tell us about the 5 love languages, how you can learn the love language of your spouse and those around you, and also how they can learn your love language so we all can be loved the way we want to be loved. Won't you please stay with us for the next half hour or so? Our newsletter begins right after this message.
Ascension Parish, a parish steeped in tradition. It's a place where generations of families have continued to enjoy a lifestyle that centers on community living and community celebration. It's a place where we care about each other and we care about ourselves. For more than 50 years, the Ascension Counseling Center has continued the tradition of helping individuals and families change behaviors and change lives. The Ascension Counseling Center.
Thanks for staying with us for what promises to be an enlightening conversation with our director, Suzanne Hamilton. Hi, Suzanne. Welcome.
Thank you, Lisa. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, we're happy to have you, and we're excited to learn about the 5 love languages. But let's just start with you giving us some background information about who you are and your credentials.
All right. I'm a licensed professional counselor, have been for 25 years. I began at the agency as a counselor until I became the director a few years ago.
Okay.
I have a special interest in couples. I've worked a lot with couples, and couples who were struggling to overcome affairs, or couples who were trying to get on the same page with their parenting.
Okay.
Couples whose marriages are failing and not knowing what to do about it. And so I've been to advanced training for various aspects dealing with couples, and one of them is the 5 love languages.
Okay, great. So we are looking forward to hearing about the 5 love languages because, as we know, we get married, there's the romantic part, we're all excited, and we're excited for the first few years, and then sometimes things dwindle, and couples need to learn how to reconnect. So tell us about the 5 love languages and help our couples to reconnect again.
Well, you've said something really important, and that's that we all start out with romantic love. And it's generally what leads us to marriage. And really, most people believe that this desire for romantic love and getting married is a deeply ingrained part of us that prompts us to want to find a partner. And so we start out very much in love, and then we get married, and we have the honeymoon. And over the years, it seems like the marriage and the romance dwindles away. And couples, each individual in the couple can either feel like they're unloved or like they don't even love or don't even like their partner anymore. That's often what brings people into counseling. If any of our viewers is in that situation where they wake up and they say, who the heck is this that I'm married to?
It's not the same person I married 5 or 6 years ago.
They can come to the agency and we can help them work through that.
Okay. And I think it's important to point out to couples that it's not something that's intentional, but our everyday hectic lives sort of pull us apart and draw us to work when kids come in and other obligations. But there are ways to reconnect. So start telling us.
All right. That is one of the things that sometimes people think that romantic love, once they get married, that's all they have to do. They just have to live the rest of their lives. They think of romantic love kind of like a fountain bubbling up with water. It's just always bubbling, it's always there, it's recycled, and it keeps going. And that's not really the case with love.
Okay.
Love is more like the gas tank in your car. We have an emotional love tank on the inside of us, and as we go about driving and living our daily lives, that tank gets sucked dry. And we all of a sudden end up with an empty tank. And we don't have the energy or the desire or the love on the inside of us for our spouse anymore. And so that's the idea behind this, that love has to be very intentional. In fact, many people say love is a behavior. And so we have to be intentional, not forget about our partner and the things we need to do in the day-to-day grind that we go through every day.
Okay, so it's important to look at the 5 love languages as a way to express yourself emotionally with your partner.
Yes.
And to remember that love is actually an action verb. It's
Yes.
not just a noun, so that requires action. And just like a gas tank, when it goes empty, somebody has to do some work to fill it up. So love and relationships take work. It's maintenance that has to be ongoing.
Yes.
Okay.
Now, one of the things about the love languages is the idea that what's loving for you is different than what's loving for me.
Ah.
And it's about educating people that even though, have you ever noticed that you might do something very loving and very caring, you spend a lot of time to put it together for your spouse, and they don't even seem to notice, or they don't even seem to care, it doesn't mean anything to them like it does for you.
Yes.
And so the idea behind the love languages is that each one of us has a unique thing or action that makes us feel like the other person loves us.
Okay.
And it's kind of the idea, like if you're married to someone who's French,
Okay.
and you only speak English and they only speak French,
Okay.
you cannot communicate with each other. You're going to have a lot of trouble. You might come up with hand signals. You might learn each other's language. That's
Right.
the only way it's going to really work.
Okay.
And the idea is that with the different love languages, we all have a small part of each one, but one of them is going to be primary. And if my primary love language is different than yours, then we can never we'll be expressing love to the other person in our love language, and they won't feel loved at all.
Okay.
So we want to figure out what our love language is so we can ask for it, and what our spouses or our partner's love language is so we can give it to them.
Okay. And then the couples can be on the same page, understanding each other, reconnecting. Okay, so give us a list of what the love languages are and what they actually mean so we can understand it better.
Okay, I'll run through all of them.
Okay.
The first one is words of affirmation,
Okay.
and then there's also spending quality time together.
Okay.
There is receiving gifts,
Okay.
acts of service, and physical touch.
Okay. Okay. So I'm sure you're going to give us more information about them, so we're excited.
Okay.
Let's get into it. Tell us what words of affirmation means and how we can use it.
Words of affirmation are pretty much like it sounds. It's being verbal, giving compliments, giving words of appreciation, saying thank you. But one of the things is encouraging words. And
Okay.
encouraging words are designed to inspire our spouse to do something, or to be courageous, to take chances that they want to, or to help their self-esteem.
Okay.
And so words of encouragement are things that we can give our spouse when they're trying any kind of a new venture, or when they're trying something new at home.
Okay.
You're going back to college, you're getting a new job, afraid to apply for a job. These are the
Okay.
times that we are telling our spouse, we're encouraging them to follow through on their dreams or their goals.
Okay.
So that's a very important one.
Okay. And could it also be something as simple as, because we have to find ways in our day-to-day lives to use words of affirmation, especially if that's our spouse's or our mate's way of feeling love. Could it be something as simple as, you know, John decided to take the trash out and his wife turns around and says, thank you. Could it be something as simple as that we can start to incorporate?
It is. It's saying thank you in a way that lets them know that you genuinely appreciate that, because
Okay.
nobody really has to take out the trash.
Right.
And your spouse chooses to do that.
Okay.
And so when you say thank you, you're recognizing that the other person has chosen to do something that's going to enhance the functioning of the family and the household and the marriage. And so saying thank you, when you're asking for something from your spouse, using humble words, not making demands. Would you mind, or please? Always saying please and thank you. I remind myself all the time, say please and thank you. Even at the agency, no matter what anybody does, please and thank you. And at home, my husband and I have been married 30 years. I still thank him for taking out the trash and for doing anything like that, because I know he doesn't have to.
Right. And it's so important in the relationship. Okay.
And also using kind words with each other. So it's really about thinking through our tone of voice. You might say something that might not be offensive, but the way you say it could be. People give backhanded compliments all the time, or people use a sarcastic tone of voice, or it's kind of like a double message. You're saying a positive thing, but it's coming across as, I don't really mean that.
Right.
You know, so it's
Exactly.
making sure that that what you're saying, you're using kind words and using, you know, making requests and not demands.
It sounds like you have to have kind expressions to go along with those kind words, because we can say kind words, but if our nonverbal cues, our movements, the eye roll and the smirk on the face says otherwise, people won't receive it well. So.
And the nonverbal is part of the words of communication, and so it's very important that that our body's language is following through on what our words are saying. Another really important one is kind of an indirect word of encouragement, and that's whenever you're bragging or praising your spouse when they're not there, because it gets back to them. Right? So when I'm telling my spouse something, wow, I really appreciate the way whenever a light bulb needs to be changed, you get right up and do it. All right, and that's one thing, but it's another thing if I'm saying that to my friends and somebody says back to him, you know, wow, I heard, you know, that you get right up and what, are you trying to make us look bad? You know, how guys are. So it really is very meaningful that you are praising them or appreciative of them verbally when they're not around and they hear about it.
Yeah, it makes it real. It's not that she's just telling me this at home. She appreciates me and loves me enough that she shares this with other people. So they know how special I am to her. That's really a good thing.
Another thing is, you know, when our spouse does something that might be a big job, you know, we need to focus on what we appreciate that they got done and not focus on what didn't get done. All right, so my love language is words of affirmation. That means I can be healing with my words, but I can also be hurtful with my words because that's my love language. So, I mean, that's what we do this all the time. So Mark power washed the house, you know, just to clean it off. He did the whole thing. He was out there hours. It was hot. And he said, come see how great it looks, you know, and I went out there. And I said, oh, look, you missed a spot. It's like, threw up his hands.
He went
from
here to there.
And so that was, you know, I realized right away what I did. I need to focus on, you know, what he did and how great it looks, and trust that he knows exactly what didn't get done, and he'll take care of it. You know, so partly it's showing trust in your partner to know what needs to be done. And you know, I want to say it's not just about flattering your partner to make them do what you want. It's just a fact that the more positive and thankful and motivating we are, that motivates our spouse to respond in kind. And so it's really not just designed to get what you want, it's designed to express love. The fact that you might get what you want is secondary. Because it's about me expressing love to you. If I do that and you do an act of service to give me what I want, that's your expression of love back to me. And the other thing is that with words of affirmation, it doesn't have to be words. It could be cards, letters, notes that you put in your kids' school lunches, anything like that. So I know a lady that the cards are so important to her. You know, we give her cards every occasion, and she'll pull them out on her birthdays and say, look at all the cards I received. That means love to her. And so it's if finding cards are important, then, or getting cards is important, then you need to do that for that person, even if you don't give cards to anybody else. So give them the cards or emails or things like that that are going to make them feel loved.
So it really sounds like the 5 love languages will work not just in, we think of romantic relationships, but in any of your relationships.
It'll work with your coworkers, with your children, anybody.
So we got the words of affirmation, so what's the next?
The next one is quality time. And it's like you hear people say, it's not the quantity, it's the quality. That's what this is about. If you spend, this is about giving someone your undivided attention.
Okay. Which is hard in this world of technology.
It really is. But even if
Okay.
you do 10 minutes, so it's not just sitting together watching TV.
Okay.
For
Because
some
you're
people,
focused on something
You're focused on
external.
something else. Yeah.
Okay.
For some people, that is enough for them.
Okay.
It's enough for them just to be in the same room together,
Okay.
whether they talk or not. And
Okay.
because just remember that all of these are unique to each couple.
Right.
And so some people feel that they've connected with each other even if they're both in the room working on separate projects. They
Okay.
just want
They're
that
sharing
presence.
a space.
But
Okay.
in general, quality time is that you're giving them that undivided attention. You're sitting with them on the couch, you're making eye contact, you don't have the TV or the radio or anything else on to take your attention, and you just give each other your undivided attention. And at home, we used to sit and have our dinner together, and the TV would be on.
Right.
And one day Mark turned it off. He said, and later he said, you know what, our conversation has really improved since we
Right.
don't have that on. Both in the amount that we were talking and in the things that we talked about.
Right. And I imagine that's going to take a little time because initially turning off the TV leaves that awkward, silent space.
Yes.
But it's something that couples and even family members need to continuously do, and eventually conversations will start and they will grow, and you will start to look forward to that quality time together.
And I knew a couple, and he would listen to National Public Radio all day. He was in his truck a lot for his job. So he would listen to the radio all day so that they would have something new and fresh to talk about when he got home. So he would actively bring topics that they could talk about. And you can actually get books that give you conversation starters for couples. Things like if you were stranded on a desert island and could take 2 people with you, can't be your spouse, who would that be? And so there are a lot of different things like that that are conversation starters. Yes.
Okay, great.
And the more you do it, the better you get at it.
Right. And I think also key in that is we talk to each other, even with family members, but also looking eye to eye. You mentioned that, looking that person in the eye and listening to them. When you're looking at someone and your phone's down, all the other stuff is away, they know that in that moment they have your attention. So I think that's very important.
And it could be, even though you're just talking about what has to happen to help the home run well that day, it could be that you're stopping, you're looking directly at each other, and you have your hands on their waist or their shoulders. So you're doing a lot more than just planning. You're connecting.
Okay. Okay. So quality time, that's right there at the top.
Yeah, and so it's really about togetherness. It's about interacting with each other. And let's face it, in a home we live in close proximity to each other.
Yes.
So we have a lot of opportunity at home to connect with each other, and so we need to take advantage of that. Maintain eye contact. Don't be doing, as we talked about, don't be doing something else while your spouse is talking to you. That's when we end up with those times where you have a conversation, you tell them where they need to be, and after the fact they say, you never told me about that, because we just didn't listen.
Okay.
We want to try to observe the body language. We want to try to listen for the feelings of what they're telling us.
Okay.
Usually if somebody has a complaint, and hopefully the love language is, if you have a complaint about your kid or your partner not taking out the trash, it means something to them. And so we want to listen to what are they really saying. And that's why we need, when you're making a complaint, we go back to the words of affirmation. It needs to be humble, it needs to be loving and kind, so that the other person can hear what you're really trying to say. If we don't approach them in that way, they're not going to listen to us
they shut down
at
before.
all. And then for some people this is really, really, really hard. We need to refuse to interrupt.
Okay.
So we need to let them say everything they need. And for some couples that's really hard, and some couples will say, well, if she's talking to me for 5 or 10 minutes, I can't remember everything I want to say, so I want to say it right then just so I don't forget. So write it down.
So it's okay, have a little pen and pad when you know you're having a serious discussion.
Just agree with each other in advance. I'm going to make notes so that I remember what I want to say, but I don't interrupt you. What you have to say is important. I want you to say everything, and when you're finished, then I'll refer to my list and we can talk about each one of these things more in depth.
I think that's great because it actually helps the person that's listening. Because if you're trying to hold in your head, you just said one thing and I'm holding it in my head, I need to comment, I need to comment.
Yes.
You don't hear anything else
No.
somebody says, so that's really important. Okay, great. So we'll move on to the third one.
All right. The third one is receiving gifts. And a gift is something that's kind of symbolic. It's symbolic of that you thought of the other person.
Okay.
And it's something that you can hold in your hand and say, look,
Yeah.
he was thinking about me or she thought about me. And so it might even be something free. There's a lot of people that say, well, I can't bring her flowers every day, or
Right.
I can't give him a gift every day. But it could be just a little something that you pick up, or a little something that you find, or a flower out of the yard, anything at all like that. It doesn't have to be, or, you know.
It doesn't have to cost
something-
money. It doesn't have to be elaborate.
It doesn't
It's
have
just
to
a
be
thought
big or
behind it.
expensive. It's just something to show that you are thinking about the other person. You go on
Okay.
vacation, you bought them a little something.
Okay.
Went to a craft fair, got you a little something.
Yeah.
You know, those kind of things. This might be a problem for some people for several
Okay.
different ways. If you're used to spending money, you know, sometimes people will say, I don't want you to buy me expensive things because it doesn't feel personal to them. Or
Okay.
they'd much rather have a little, you know.
Sometimes it's just the presence of your company. Some of your time is a gift to someone else.
Yes, that might be your gift. I'm going to take you to the zoo,
Okay.
or I'm going to babysit for you.
Okay.
For
Or we
Christmas,
can go
I've taken-
walking in the evenings
Yes, something
after
like
work
that.
and
I mean, for
reconnect.
Christmas, before I've given my nieces and nephews a shopping trip. So I would give them all a certain amount of money. We'd all go to the mall. They got to buy what they wanted. We had lunch together. It was a day out.
Right.
So there's things like that you can give that show more than just giving a gift.
Okay.
For people who, there are some people that they have trouble spending money due to their
Yes.
upbringing. They
Right.
didn't have much when they were growing up. So I'm not talking about overextending yourself financially. Never
Okay.
do that.
Yeah.
Go for the free things.
Give within your means. I mean, it
Yes.
just makes me think about an example that keeps playing in my head is when my daughter was in kindergarten, she wrote me a letter, and I still have that letter, and I still read it at least once a month. But it was a simple gift of her saying, thank you, Mom, for getting up early, getting us to school. Most of the times we're on time. Sometimes we're late, but you think about us and you go on every one of our field trips. So that stays with me. So when I feel my love tank getting low with all the things
Yes.
you do as a mother, you know, being or as an aunt or as a responsible party for other kids, I read that note and my tank gets full again and I'm ready for all the demands they make on me.
Those are your words of affirmation. Yes.
Yeah.
So people need to kind of rethink, don't spend outside your means. If you are someone who, you like to save things, you might need to kind of work on that, because there may be things that you have at home that are family heirlooms or other things that you might give to someone. You have to also know that you can give the gift of yourself to do
Right.
things, go places and spend time with.
Okay.
This is not at all a love language for me.
Okay.
In fact, one time, many years ago, I had a fight with a boyfriend, and
Okay.
after we made up, he bought me something. And when I looked at it, I thought, are you kidding me? Are you trying to buy my forgiveness? Are you trying to buy my affection? And that's kind of what it doesn't mean romantic to me.
Right.
But for some people, it does. And if I
Exactly.
were in a relationship with someone who receives gifts as a love language, I might have to give a gift,
Right.
even though that's meaningless.
That's out of
to
your
me.
comfort
Yes.
zone. Okay. Okay. So let's move on to the next love language.
Next one is acts of service, and these
Okay.
are doing things that your spouse would like to do. You're trying to please them by serving them. You express your love by doing things for them. These are the things that we all think of: cooking a meal, setting a table, getting the bugs off the windshield, taking out the trash.
Okay.
We've talked about that one before. And So just doing things that need to be done for
Okay.
your spouse. Doing things that don't need to be done. Maybe just doing something extra for them that
Okay.
it goes outside of the day-to-day actions you have to take to keep your house running. And I want to say this, you know, there are some people who expect their spouse to do everything for them, and they treat them more like a doormat
Okay.
than a lover. This is an act of love,
Okay.
that I do this for you because it means love to you. This is not about controlling your spouse or being abusive or expecting your spouse to do everything you command them to do. It's really about, it's not like treating them like an object.
Okay.
It's not manipulating them or coercing them. It's doing it with love.
Okay.
And those other things are not expressions of love. Those other things are expressions of selfishness.
Okay, so you have to be careful about that
Yes.
when you're doing acts of service. And it just makes me think, because I hear couples oftentimes say, yes, he tells me he loves me. He will kiss me on my cheek. He will say he loves me in front of everybody else. And I know he loves me, but I don't quite feel it because I'm responsible for the kids. I'm responsible for bill paying, for keeping the house up. What I really need him to do to show me he loves me is take on one of these tasks and do it for me. That makes me really feel loved. So I think that's one of the traps that couples get caught in.
And what she's saying is that acts of service is her love language. And if she has to do everything herself, then she's not feeling loved. She's feeling like she's giving all the love, even though that's not his. Because he's saying, I love you. It's probably words of affirmation. And even if he said, thank you, after she did all of those things.
It's just not her love language, and it's not what she appreciates or needs to feel loved.
Yes.
So I think I think one of the important things that people will need to know here is, and you have to first figure out your love language, but they're not left on their own to do that, because there's a love language quiz, correct?
Yes,
that
we'll
will
talk
help
about
them
that, how to figure out your love language.
Because I can just see our audience thinking, this sounds good, but how do I know my love
show
language?
You 3 ways to figure out how to do that. And I think with the acts of service, one of the other things that's important is for people to overcome their stereotypes. We all grew up in families that were different, and we learned our roles as parents, children, husbands, wives, from what our family of origin did. And so we might be talking about, you know, an act of service that someone believes only males should do that. Only females should do that. And so they need to be able to find a way to look at that not as the shoulds of this is what it is to be a female, but as a way of expressing love to their partner.
Okay, as a way of what works for my family in this moment, in this time, regardless of what I've learned, let's see what works for my family in this moment. Okay. So you ready to go into the final one?
The 5th one is physical touch. And these are things like touching, hugging, putting your hand on your partner's shoulder if you're handing them a cup of coffee, holding hands, kissing, and even sex between married couples. Touch is unlike all the other senses. Your sight, smell, hearing, those are all localized to one place on your body. Touch you feel throughout your body, and so you have a lot more opportunities to touch, and you have a lot more you know, opportunities to feel loved by physical touch. And you know, it's things like when you pass each other in the hallway, we'll go in different directions, you just might stop and hug each other or just touch each other. For kids, you'll see this a lot, you know, where they're just playfully tapping each other and like tripping each other. And it's like whenever you're traveling and you say, nobody else touch anybody else for the rest of your lives. And so what they're probably saying is they need a physical touch. And even if that's just like whacking each other, for them that's touch. You might see it's just one child who's always tapping and touching and tripping. And that's probably his love language.
Yeah, because when I think of physical touch, it starts at birth. Because when you think about infant babies in neonatal ICU, and they can't be held by their parents for whatever illnesses they are, but you will see little openings where the parents can actually stick their hands in and just massage and touch them. So physical touch starts as early as when we come into this world, and it's so important.
It is, and you know, the body really is for touching, and physical touching equals emotional. So if we withdraw physically, our partner feels like we've withdrawn emotionally.
Okay.
And so you know that if you try to touch or hug your spouse and they back away, or if you're in bed and one just rolls over and turns their back as far away as possible,
Yes.
you know, that feels like an emotional
Withdrawal.
And it's like, think about in our culture where you extend your hand to shake hands with somebody, and how we look at that if the other person won't shake our hands.
Right.
That's really considered an insult. And,
Yes.
and so it's really important, the touching for each other. And so, you know, even especially in times of emotional crisis, a death in the family, or, you know, losing a job, or something like that, you know, it's even more important to just put your arm around that person and be there for them.
Because touch in that moment becomes more important than actual words. You know, it's
Yes.
very comforting
It's
to
just
have someone
have
touch
the
you.
presence there.
Yeah. And I think touching, the physical touch, reminds people we're real. This person is real with real emotions, real feelings, and need to be connected. And I touched you, I connected with you. It reminded me of my realness and my humanness. So I think physical touch is great.
And let me say this about physical touch and about sex within married relationships. You know, sometimes couples almost like, when the emotional intimacy disappears, sometimes the physical relationship disappears as well. And if your language is physical touch, it's really important to begin to ask for what you want. And so, especially like in a time of crisis, you might say to your spouse, you know, during this time when, you know, mom's in hospice, it would really be a comfort to me if we could resume our intimate relationship. And so we can ask for those things, and our spouse would probably be willing to do that. And because you're asking respectfully and you're asking emotionally. I think usually when we give what our emotional need is for this thing we're asking for, our partner is a lot more willing to respond. And if your partner's physical touch is their language, then they're really going to feel it if there's distance, physical distance. And so as sometimes, you know, we've talked about loving the person in their love language. If their love language is physical touch and yours is not, you're going to be at different levels for physical intimacy. And just as we've said with the other love languages, that sometimes you have to just give your partner what you need, it's true with the physical touch as well. And if you don't feel you have enough emotional intimacy to return to sex with your partner, then you need to have an open discussion about what you can do. And most couples would be comfortable. Sometimes couples are not comfortable with even hugging or kissing because they feel like it'll lead to an intimacy that they're not ready to have yet. But I think
they feel pressured.
Yeah, they feel like if I do this, if I give you anything, you're going to want.
Yeah. You're going to want the complete physical touch, and that's not where I am in this moment.
So if you can get to the point where you can have that conversation so that you can say, you know, if we kiss and hug, that will be enough for me, even though I want more, then the other person who is not loved by physical touch will feel more comfortable to give what they need. And it's the kind of thing with anything, we just have to practice.
Practice and communicate.
Yes.
It sounds like communication is so important there. Okay. Well, now to the big question. We've covered the 5 love languages: receiving gifts, quality time, physical touch, acts of services, and words of affirmation. So how do we learn what our love language is and what our spouse's or our sister or our cousin or our coworker's love language is and work with them?
Okay. The first thing is, what does your spouse do or fail to do that hurts you most deeply?
Okay, so when we think about that, I'll just throw out multitasking. Multitasking, when we're sitting there having a conversation, he's multitasking. So
Not
where
having
do we
that
go from there?
conversation. All right, so where we go for that is the opposite of that is your love language.
Okay.
So if your words hurt me, that's the thing that hurts me the most, what you say to me, then the opposite, that's your love language is words of affirmation.
Okay.
If what makes me the angriest and what hurts me is you don't do anything around the house, if that's your complaint all the time, then your love language is acts of service.
Okay.
All right, so it's the thing that hurts you the most deeply.
Okay.
I don't get a gift for my birthday, I could care less. That's not my, but if he says something mean, you know,
Yeah.
I'm a words of affirmation that's going to hurt me the most.
Okay.
So it's the thing that hurts you the most, the thing that you complain the most about. You never take me out to dinner. You never go with our kids to their little league game.
Okay.
All right, so whatever your complaints, whatever the thing that hurts you, the opposite of that, going to a game is quality time, or it could be acts of service, you know.
Right.
And so, or, you know, you don't kiss me anymore.
Right.
You know.
You never touch me unless it's, you know,
Unless
it's
you want
bedroom
sex.
time and it's intimacy time, then you
Yeah.
touch me. So that means your love language would be physical touch.
Physical touch. That's right. So
Okay.
whatever hurts you the most, whatever you complain about the most, that's your love
Come
language.
to the love language, fit it into one that applies to you,
Yes,
and you've
and
got
that's
your
what
love
it is.
language. Okay, so what about, so now you've learned yours, helping your spouse to learn his or her love language.
Well, you'll find the same thing. Whatever you do that hurts them the most is going to
So
be
we've
their
got
love
to
language.
pay attention to that.
Yes, we have to pay attention to what upsets them the most. And the other way to look at it is, what is the thing that you most often request your spouse to do?
Okay.
That you request from your spouse. The thing that you most often requested is likely the thing that will make you feel more loved. So
Okay.
it's the thing about, can you just pick up your own clothes?
Okay.
And you say that every day.
Yeah.
Can you take me out to dinner? You spend more time with your friends than you do with me.
Okay.
You spend more time on your computer than you do with me. So those are the things. So I need for you to spend more time with me. I need for you to come home earlier from work. Those things that you ask for the most, that's showing your love language. And when your spouse does the same to you, I need you to, have dinner on the table when I come home. I need for you to run those errands and pick up the prescriptions.
Okay.
Whatever they request of you the most or complain about the most, that's their love language.
Okay. Okay.
And the third way to tell what our love language is, look at the way we regularly express our love to our spouse.
Okay.
That's our love language. So if
Okay.
I'm always giving you cards, if I'm always, cleaning up after you, if I'm always trying to sit with you or get you to sit, give you cards, hugging you every time I pass you, or whatever you do most often to your spouse is your love language.
Okay.
The part that's important about that is that's your love language.
Exactly.
It's not theirs. So you can do that all you want, but they're not going to feel loved. You're going to be loving, loving, loving. They're not going to feel loved at all.
And so the problem still exists there.
Yes.
The disconnect continues on because you still haven't found what actually makes your spouse tick.
And for Mark and I, we would give each other a card every year for our anniversary. And I would give him these super duper romantic flowers, hearts and flowers, poetry cards. And he would give me some kind of like The Far Side, some kind of humorous card. And we did that for years, and I would get so frustrated. Finally, we realized I wanted the romantic card, and he wanted the humorous card. So we switched, and now he gives me a romantic card, and I give him a humorous card, and we enjoy the cards that we got. And so I'm giving him something, I was giving him what I wanted to receive, and he was giving me what he wanted to receive.
If I had a dime, every time I heard a couple say that in couples therapy, I keep giving him what I needed.
Yes.
but they missed the point. That's
Yes.
not what he needs. And you need to tell him what you need. Instead of giving to him what you need, we can also learn to give to ourselves what we need. We can't always want or expect the spouse to give us what we need. We can give it to ourselves.
Yes.
We can communicate it with our spouse, and we can find that balance between being able to meet those love languages. It's not all in one, you know,
No.
you give as much of it.
It's over time. You know, our tank gets empty over time,
Okay.
and sometimes it gets full over time.
Okay, so give us a little summary of the love languages so our audience can walk away with their tanks full with the skills they need to go out and get what they need from their
Okay,
mates.
and one of the things to remember is that everyone has more than one love language,
Okay.
but you'll have one that's primary.
Okay,
So some things, other things will make you feel loved, but you want to identify the one that's most important for you. And as we talked about, love is a behavior, so really love is a choice. I can
Okay.
choose to provide an act of service. I can choose to buy you a card. I can choose
That
to hug
action
you,
verb,
even
yes.
though I don't feel it on the
Okay.
inside. I'm not doing it for me. If I only do it when I feel like it, then I'm being selfish. I have to do it
and you
when
end
I
up in
want.
couples therapy.
That's right. You end up saying me.
Okay. Okay, so it's just important to know your own love language, to know your spouse or your family member, your colleague's love language, and to be willing to give that love language to that person to connect with it, and also share and talk about what your love language is. That's
Yes.
communication is key. Identify your love language, communicate with each other about it, and commit to giving and reacting with your partner based on their love language.
Yes.
Great. Thanks so much, Suzanne.
You're welcome.
This
It was
opens the
fun.
door for a lot of couples to get the help they need and family members.
And we
So
hope that
thanks
they will.
again.
We hope that if you can take these principles and apply them on your own, you and your spouse, that's great. And that's a wonderful thing. It says your marriage is strong and that you're both really working hard. But if you try to implement these things and you see that you're just struggling with it, even understanding the different things, or struggling with getting them into place, or struggling with one spouse not as committed
Right.
with the other, then you come into our agency and we can help you with that.
Great. Well, thanks for being here, Suzanne,
You're
and
welcome.
thank you for spending your time with us for this episode of Ascension Counseling Center's video newsletter. You can catch replays of the program exclusively on Ascension 21 on the days and times listed on your screen, or anytime on Ascension 21's YouTube channel. We look forward to many more episodes where we can talk about what's available at Ascension Counseling Center and how our programs can help change lives. Remember, Ascension Counseling Center is here by way of your support. We are a department of Ascension Parish government, and as such, we are all parish employees. We're funded by a 2 mil property tax millage, which means that $2 from every $1,000 you pay in taxes goes to support our agency, so we can provide free and low-cost mental health and substance abuse outpatient services to residents of Ascension. We have 2 locations, one in Gonzales at 1112 Southeast Ascension Complex, off Worthy Road across from the courthouse and next to the health unit, and one at 419 Memorial Drive in Donaldsonville, next door to Prevost Hospital. You can reach us at either location by calling 225-450-1016. You can also find us on the web at www.ascensionparish.net/MH and on Facebook at Ascension Counseling Center. Thanks for your support, and until next time, from everyone at Ascension Counseling Center, thank you for watching.